I've had the same problem on a couple of different motorcycles I got here. They're old. The batteries keep going dead on me, and I'm going to see if I can figure out what's causing it to drain the batteries. The first test I did, I'm not an electrician, and I don't figure I'm very good at it as far as solving electrical problems, but what I noticed is when I hook up my ohm meter on here between the battery cables, the battery's out of it. The battery goes in this box right here. What I notice is this needle right here moves over, so there's some sort of a drain on that battery even though the switch is off. All the switches, the turn signals, everything's off. The ignition switch is off, and yet you see this drain on here. Now if I turn the ignition switch on, you see it, that needle goes way over like that. But I'm still getting some register of ohms on here. I've tried both different scales on the thing, and I find there is something draining the battery even though the ignition switch is off. The ignition switch is just a key up here. Now this bike it's a 1972 bike, so it's pretty old, but something does drain the battery. Now my first thought, of course, would be to fix this would be, all I need to do is put some sort of a toggle switch under here, that someplace where I could get to it easy, that would disconnect the ground on the battery. You know, just a toggle switch, and for sure that would stop anything from draining. But still, I'm going to make an attempt to see if I can figure out if there's something else that's obvious, if I can track it down and see where the drain is. I separated these connectors here and here, but it made no difference on the meter. So the problem must lay elsewhere, wherever that current draw is coming from. Now here, this is the positive cable that goes on the battery. The rubber insulator on here was really bad. This has been repaired before. I think I repaired it once, and it was all taped up. I had to get tape off there, but here you can see the red wire splits into two, and this one goes to the key switch, I think, up on the headlight. This one apparently goes in to this stuff here, which I think is the rectifier system and voltage regulator for this thing. So I've decided I'm going to try to unplug this and see if that stops the problem. Okay, what I did here now is I've unplugged this red wire, one of the red wires from here where the two came together, onto this battery wire. I put my meter back on there to see if I have a problem, and what do you know? No problem anymore. So what I will do now is I will put this connector here onto this wire, and sure enough, there's a voltage leak right there. You see that? I hope you can focus on that. I don't know. But anyways, the meter shows that there's some current flowing through there, some resistance there. So the problem has to be in this rig here. So that means I'm going to have to take that apart and see if I can find out what's wrong with it. Maybe it just needs cleaned, who knows. I tend to think, if you can see all this, it looks pretty dirty, pretty corroded up, and this part right here are the diodes, I guess, that rectify the current. Each of them mounted on a heat sink here. But I got a sneaking suspicion if I clear all the dirt and rust off this thing, it probably will work perfect. At least I found that out when I worked on the intercom for my airplane. If you see that video, you'll find out I just brush it with baking soda and a soft brush, and it cleans up a circuit board like you wouldn't believe. So maybe I'll just try cleaning this thing first. I've cleaned up this rectifier here and voltage regulator and everything a little bit, but it didn't really help anything. I can see no difference. As you can see by my meter here, I still have some voltage leakage there. It's not the same as, you know, being a dead short, but it's definitely going to drain some current if I was to put that on a motorcycle. Now I've tried it, this voltage regulator and rectifier here, and now I've switched it to one I found in my parts supply. It's just an old one off an old bike. Of course, it's probably 50 years old too, just as much as the other one is, if age makes any difference. But as you can see, it reads exactly the same thing. So it could be that you always have voltage leakage. I mean, it's always drawing a little bit of current. I'm sure it's a very small amount, but and that could be running down the battery. It usually will go dead after 2-3 weeks maybe. If I don't run it more often than that, the battery is going to be dead. Now I've tried a couple of diodes here taken from a car alternator. They pass absolutely no current in one direction. You can see the meter reads 0. There's no resistance in there at all. It just won't pass any current that way. Now there is some resistance when I reverse the wires, and you can see the needle goes up. It's still not a complete conductivity, I'd call it, but it does pass current pretty easily this way. I don't know if both I have a couple of them, and both of them do the same thing. So I'm not real familiar with how a charging system on the motorcycle works, but it seems to me like there's always going to be a current drain off of these battery boxes. Secondly, a comment I'd have is the battery box is on top, which you can see it's a little rusty from acid and stuff over 50 years. If the battery boils and a little acid leaks out, they put the voltage regulator and rectifier underneath the battery box. Probably not the best place to put it, but like I say, they both do the exact same thing. Okay, now I have exactly the same reading on this scooter. It's a Chinese scooter, but it still has a slight amount of conductivity with the key off, and it's still, this thing I figure should read 0. To get it to read 0, all I really need to do is take the ground off, and then you can see the meter drops to 0. So right now my thinking is maybe what I need to have is some sort of a toggle switch on this thing. Could mount it in here. I'll find a place to mount it on the Yamaha that will definitely break the ground on the battery, and the motorcycle will not start, will not charge, nothing will work on it as long as that toggle is thrown. I'll just have to remember to turn that toggle switch off if I'm going to let it set for any length of time. That's the only cure I can think of. I can't use a relay to do it, because with the battery disconnected, it's not going to work. You don't have any current to work the relay. So it's just about got to be a toggle switch.